Good morning, my friends. Welcome to another day of Mr. B's art class. Today, we're going to be doing a project based on the artist named Ted Harrison. He is a Canadian artist and he was famous for making amazing landscapes with amazing bright colors. I'm so excited for you guys to learn about him and to do a project right after inspired by his artwork. So we're gonna start with a short video talking about his life and his early artwork, and then we're gonna get straight into the project. You will need a piece of paper, pencil, markers or crayons, and even if you have watercolor or paint, you can use them as well. So let's begin in 3, 2, 1, let's go.
I'd like to introduce you to Canadian artist Ted Harrison. He was born in Wingate, a mining town in England, and always wanted to see more of the world. He served in the British Army during the Second World War and was stationed in North Africa and Southeast Asia. He was inspired by the colors he saw in the markets around him and liked to sketch the new landscapes he saw and the people he met. When he came back after the war, he decided to study to become an art teacher. And when the time came to find the right school for him, he was intrigued by an advertisement in the paper for a teaching position in the Yukon, Canada. The advertisement said that the job was not for the weak. Ted moved to the Yukon and was mesmerized by his new environment. Cold, harsh winters, short daylight, the vast open landscape of jagged mountains, flat turquoise lakes, and the aurora borealis, northern lights, inspired him. The people of the Yukon, a small community, embraced him, and Ted became a beloved teacher and an advocate for the Yukon way of life. He illustrated children's books about the life at the Yukon, as well as painting his large landscapes. Ted Harrison's landscapes are colorful, the landforms simplified, outlined in thick lines. They look almost like abstract flat shapes. His colors are bold and bright, like the landscape of a fantastical land. Ted Harrison believed that we should all try to spread happiness wherever we may be, and his bright, beautiful paintings bring joy to all who see them.
Hi guys! So today I'm going to teach you how to do two different works of art inspired by Ted Harrison, who's a famous Canadian artist. So you can follow along to learn how to make this whale painting, or you can follow along to learn how to make this Inukshuk painting. I'm going to teach you how to do both at once, so if you're super crazy, maybe you can even do both of them. And the cool thing about this art project is you can use whatever materials you have at home. So for this one, I use paint, and for this one, I use markers. But you could also use crayons, or pencil crayons, or pastels, watercolor, whatever you have at home will work perfect for this art project. So if you'd like to learn how to make one of these, or both, stick around. Before we do art in my class, we always start by looking at lots of pictures by the artist. So when you look at these works, you'll see that Ted Harrison uses lots of bold black lines, solid bright colors, and he uses contrasting colors a lot to help you see the subject matter. Ted Harrison has an awesome website you can check out and also illustrated many Canadian books. Alright, so we're going to do actually two guided drawings at once. And that might sound a little bit crazy, but since they're both inspired by Ted Harrison art, they're going to have a lot of similarities between the two. So I'm going to do two guided drawings, but you can just follow along with one of them. So if you'd like to do the Inukshuk, you're going to follow along with this piece of paper. And if you'd like to do the whale and the boat, you're going to follow along to this piece of paper. Before we get started though, I want to show you about what kind of lines we're going to be using. So Ted Harrison uses a variety of different lines. He might use straight lines, but often Ted Harrison uses curved lines. And there's different kinds of curved lines. There are fast curved lines. Fast curved lines have lots of bumps, and lots of deep valleys. But what we're going to use most of the time are these slow curved lines. Slow curved lines gradually go up to a bump and slowly go down to a valley. So we won't use many of these fast curved lines. We're mostly going to stick to these slow curved lines. So I'm going to use white cardstock and a Sharpie to make sure that you can see the lines that I'm drawing. But if this is your first time doing this drawing, I would definitely do maybe a practice and probably start with pencil and go over it with Sharpie at the end. All right, so our first step will be to do our horizon line. If you are doing the Inukshuk, our horizon line is going to be about in the middle of the page. I'm going to do a slow curved line. If you're doing the whale, our horizon line is going to be about a hand down from the top. So I use my hand as a marker, but I don't keep it there when I draw because then my line will get a little bit wonky. So I hold it there to look. Maybe I can even kind of put a dot where I'm going to start if I really need it. Move my hand, and then I'm going to do my drawing. Okay. Next, in our Inukshuk drawing, we're going to add two big mountains. So I'm adding kind of these triangle shapes, and to make them look more realistic, I kind of tuck one of the mountains behind the other one so you can't really see it. If you'd like to add the little snow cap on it, you can. On our whale drawing, we're going to add our boat. And so we're going to practice the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds is that our eye always likes something when it falls on one of these lines, as if we were chopping our picture into thirds. I don't know why, but our eyes just like it better. So I hold my hands first to find where those lines would be if I chopped my page into 3 pieces, and I'm going to pick one of them to draw my boat on. For this one, I think I'm going to choose this one. So I'm going to draw my boat by making 2 diagonal lines coming up, kind of like a trapezoid. And then I'm going to draw a little skinny rectangle on top. And that's all the detail I really want to add to my boat, because if you are painting, it'll be really tricky to get in those small spaces as it is. But you want your boat to be fairly big. All right, next we are going to add our suns or moons. Same thing, we're going to follow the rule of thirds. Since I have my mountains over here, I'm going to put my sun over here. Now, our eye does not like it when our sun or moon are touching the edges. For some reason, it just kind of makes us feel uncomfortable. So make sure you have some space around your sun or moon. Same thing, sun or moon over here. Now, Ted Harrison likes to split up the space so you can add lots of cool colors. So we're going to do that to our sky. And there's 2 ways that Ted Harrison usually splits up his space. And I'm going to show you both ways. So the first one I'll show over here is kind of a sunburst effect. So he will start at the sun, and you can do curved lines, you can do straight lines, but he makes them all come out from the sun as if it's shining. I'm going to do, I think I like the mostly straight lines. If one of your lines hits your boat, that's okay. Pick up your marker, imagine it's going behind it, and then keep it going on the other side. Okay. The other effect is kind of a sunset or sunrise effect, and that's by making straight or curved lines all the way across our sheet. So I'll show you on this one. So I'm going to do maybe some straight lines. Same thing, if one of your lines hits your sun or moon, just pretend it's going behind and keep it going on the other side. So I'm going to make them different weights, different thicknesses. Okay, wow, it's my first time ever doing straight lines for that effect. I kind of like it. Okay, so now we're going to add our subject. So our subject is the main part of our picture. So over here it's going to be our Inukshuk, and over here it's going to be our whale. Let's start with this one. So first I'm going to pick which side I want my Inukshuk to be on. I could choose either because I kind of have the mountains over here, I've got the sun over here, so my picture is pretty even. So I think I'm going to choose over on this side. So I am going to start with the legs of my Inukshuk. And I'm going to make it the type of Inukshuk that's kind of shaped like a person. But you can make your Inukshuk however you would like. To make it look extra realistic, try to make all the stones look a little bit different. In nature, it's very rare to see a perfectly circle or perfectly square stone. So if you make them all a little bit different, it makes it look more realistic. Then I'm going to add my ground underneath, tucking behind the legs, just like that. If I made my Inukshuk standing right on top of my ground, it looks less realistic. So I always try to push that line a little bit behind them. So I'm going to draw really lightly because these are going to be gesture lines. I'm going to want to erase them at the end. So like I said, we're going to start with kind of a big teardrop shape, but I'm going to leave it open on the other end. Not going to connect it. Okay. Then I'm going to add the tail. The tail can be a little bit tricky, but I'm actually going to make two leaf shapes. I'm going to make a curved line to a point, 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 and that makes that whale tail. Whales also have a fin on the top of their bodies, and I'm going to put a little fin on their side. To make their mouth, I'm going to go in and up and down. Now when I go over this with Sharpie, I'm not going to do these extra lines there. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to do my tail. Smile. And my fin. If I'd like to do an eye, you can do it right about here. Now that we have our subjects in the picture, we're going to split up the space in interesting ways so that we can add more colors when we're coloring. We want to split up the space in a way that makes sense. So when I'm adding my lines to split up this space, I'm remembering that this is water. So I want my lines to kind of look how water would look in an ocean. And for here, when I split up this space, this is the landform. So maybe I want to draw hills, or maybe a part where a river could be, but I want to keep in mind what I am drawing. So for this one, I'm going to add some hills. So I'm going to make slow curved lines. I'm going to imagine that this is kind of like a river or a lake. So I'm just going to come in and then go back out. And I think that looks like a landform to me. Now for my whale, I'm going to add some water. I'm going to add more of these curved lines so it kind of looks like waves. Waves going up and waves going down. Yeah, I think I like how that looks. Now, for these Ted Harrison art projects, it's important to remember to keep a pretty big amount of space in each section. If you're going to paint, like I'm going to try to, we can't paint in teeny tiny little lines, so we need to have pretty big sections. All right, if you're coloring with pencil crayon, you can use more details, but it takes a lot longer. So you can see I can kind of easily fit 2 fingers in all of my sections. Even my Inukshuk got a little bit tiny. So if I did this again, I'd probably make my Inukshuk bigger so that it's easier to color. But for this time, we'll make it work. So if you're going to paint, make sure you have a detailed brush, one that's small. I know sometimes you can get a little bit impatient and you want to fill in these big areas with a big brush, but it's going to get kind of messy. So it's better to just use a small brush. And it actually can be kind of a nice, calming, relaxing thing to paint a big painting with a small brush. I like to just put on some calm music and just work away. So I'm going to make sure that I only dip the toes of my paintbrush into the paint, because paintbrushes are like ballerinas. They stay on their tippy toes. So I'm going to the toes of my paintbrush into my paint, and I always start by going around the outside slowly. This part takes some patience. That way you're going to have nice, clean lines. Now, I know it's pretty tempting to just go super fast, but if you do, you're going to get out of your lines and your painting's not going to look very neat at the end. So you only have to go slow until you get around the edge. And whenever I see lines like this, those are called ghost lines because I can see my paper is poking through. So that means either I'm going too fast or I don't have enough paint on my brush. So I'm going to go back, grab some more paint, and try again. Once I have gone around the whole edge, then it is safe for me to paint in the inside a little bit faster. Because I don't have to be as careful now that I have that neat outline. Once you've filled in that section, you can wash your brush and move on. Ooh, this teal is really pretty. So same thing, start on your edges first. And what I normally do for this project is at the very end, I go over my Sharpie lines again in case any of my paint started to cover them up a little bit, because that'll happen and that's okay. Whenever you're painting, you want to try to either pull in one direction, like you can see I'm doing now, or to go back and forth like you're painting a dog. Painting a dog? Oh my gosh, I hope you're not painting your dog. Back and forth like you are petting a dog. But what you don't want to do is scrub. Ah, that hurts my heart to see that. Oh my gosh, that is how you get a really messy painting, and it is so bad for your brushes. It really, really wrecks them. And I want to take care of my brushes that they last a very long time. So I'm going to make sure that I'm not scrubbing. I'm just pulling in one direction, or I'm going back and forth like I'm petting a dog. Hopefully no one out there is painting their dogs. Once you have slowly outlined the whole section, then you can go back in and paint a little bit faster. So Ted Harrison uses lots of bright colors. He doesn't really use browns or grays or black that much. So when you're choosing your colors, try to choose nice bright colors. If you're painting and your paint is a little bit see-through, if you add a tiny bit of white, it'll help make it look more opaque so that you can't see all those brush strokes. That's what I did to my paint. I added a little bit of white to each color. I'm also trying to make sure that I spread out the colors. So right now I'm painting a pink section. I wouldn't want to have two pink sections right next to each other. All right, now that I have colored both of my pictures, I did this one with paint and I did this one with marker. So now the very last step is to go over top of those black lines to make them big and bold like Ted Harrison's art. And also sometimes those lines kind of get covered up by paint if you're painting, so it's a good idea to go over them. Now you can go over them with a regular Sharpie if you have one of those, but if you have one of these super big Sharpies, they work really, really awesome to get a nice bold line. And I'm going to go nice and slow. Sometimes kids rush on this part after they've done such careful painting, and if you make a mistake with Sharpie, you can erase it. So you want to go nice and slow to stick right on that line. You may notice that I've used cool colors and warm colors to help divide the space even more. So I use warm colors on the top to make it look like the sky, and cool colors on the water and in the ground. So here are my two finished pieces of art. So I made sure to go over it all with that thick black line, and I even added a black outline around the whole edge. The last job to do now is to sign it where all artists do, in the bottom right hand corner.